Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Kathleen Rehl. Kathleen is an author, educator, mentor, and storyteller. In this episode, we'll be discussing Kathleen's insights on how we change the way we think about widows, legacy, and longevity planning. Kathleen, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, excited for the conversation. So to start out, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
Change seems to be my mantra throughout my life. I started my professional career as a classroom teacher, working in public schools, and at the same time kept chipping away, earning advanced degrees. And then I got the Ph.D. and became a college professor. And I did that at two different universities for a total of 5 years. And at the end of that time, I received tenure. So I said, okay, world, what else is out there to do? And discovered this field called nonprofit organization, nonprofit management. And went into that for a dozen years. And I was basically a fundraiser and a communications person. I worked first for a national healthcare foundation, and then I worked for a state social service agency. And at the same time that I was doing that work, well, when I was with the healthcare agency, I was working with these rich docs, bringing in big gifts to the foundation. And I decided I needed to speak the same language as their attorneys, their financial advisors, their CPAs. So I enrolled in the CFP program to learn all about it. And the deeper I got into it, the more I realized, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. I'm learning how to make these planned gifts with my donors. But my bosses expected me to bring all the money to their organizations. Rightly so, they were paying my salary. But these people had interest. They liked the local symphony, the school where they graduated, their religious connections, and they wanted to make gifts there too. So I decided, I think I need to be a financial planner so I can sit on the same side of the table with those clients and direct the gifts where we want them to go. So I opened my shop as a financial advisor. It was always going to be a small boutique practice, and expected to have maybe 30 clients or so. Well, that blossomed, especially the year that I was named in the top 100 financial advisors in the whole country. And I had all kinds of people who wanted to work with me. And so, boom, I expanded. But that was really the beginning of that financial planning practice, which I continued for 18 years doing holistic, comprehensive financial advising. And at the peak, I had about 80 clients. I never wanted to be super big. I wanted to be a small outfit. But along that way, unfortunately, my husband died. And that was when I really got it. And I had worked with widows before, but when I really got it, that oh my gosh, this fear, this anxiety, this stress that I knew was happening with my clients, I was experiencing it myself. And so it was not long after that I decided that I wanted to write a book to help other widows. And also it would be a gift book that could be given to them by their financial professionals. So wrote that book, and at that point, I was only accepting new clients who were widowed or who were couples that were looking to that time ahead when one of them would just be a surviving spouse. Well, I was invited to speak and to write on the topic, to do research on the topic. And so was doing that and then still with my clients. And one of my colleagues said, Kathleen, you are absolutely going to go nuts. You're going to burn out. You cannot do both of those things simultaneously. And so I decided to go the speaking, teaching, research route because I knew I could ultimately touch the lives of more widows that way. Granted, it wouldn't be deep the way I was going with my 80 clients, but at the close of 18 years, I sold that practice and I went into what I call an encore career. It was only going to be a year or two of this getting the message out of working with widows, and it wound up 6 years. And actually, it was in that last year, and I said I'd given about 300 presentations across the country. One of the sponsors was trotting me around to different financial conferences, and I said I can't do this because every time I get up on the stage, it's like my late husband dies all over again. It was a very emotional presentation. And so I left that, and lo and behold, that was the end of the year. That was right before the pandemic came along. So the next year, all these conferences, and they shut down anyway. So my timing was perfect. And I went into, during the pandemic, I did more writing. I also did a lot more non-professional kinds of things. I took more writing classes. I wrote a lot of poetry, did a lot of family kinds of things. And then after the pandemic, people started saying, well, can you do this for us? Can you help us with this? And I decided I can pick and choose what I want to do. So like I picked and chose today, I'm doing this podcast with you because it's interesting and I'm delighted to be on your show. But there are other things that I'm asked to do, such as be involved with as a business partner with someone. And no, I don't want to do that now. So I can do a webinar, or I can write an article on what to do with insurance money after a widow receives this, and pick and choose. And there's several other things in my refirement. And that's what I'm calling, I refer to this period as refirement. It's not traditional retirement at all, because I'm 78 years and I did that little test online where you can go and see live to 100, and I'm supposed to live into my early hundreds, and I think I probably will. So I got many years ahead of me to go. So that's my evolution and change. Started out as a farm girl and a teacher, and I guess you could say I still am a teacher because I'm an educator at heart.
Well, that's awesome. That's quite the career path, but it's interesting because it sounded like, my interpretation is that as you went, you found things that you were passionate about, and that the core of your passion, it was about helping people, and and that you were able to accomplish that. And I think for a lot of people, they hold back from following their passion. And sometimes you do need to get paid, and you can't 100% follow your passion. But what was that transition like for you when it clicked? When it was like, okay, I'm more ready to do things that provide me and fill my passion.
It was at the point of closing down that encore career where I was doing the speaking, the teaching, the research, the writing. It was at that point, then moving into, all right, what's next? And some of the things that I'm writing about now are places where I am in my life. For example, I recently went through training and through the International Association of End-of-Life Doulas. So I'm a trained end-of-life doula. And I've written articles about end-of-life planning. And this coming summer, I'll be doing volunteer hospice work with those who have been assessed to be probably within 6 months of the end of their life. Well, because I'm at that age and stage where a lot of that's happening. Just last week, I got notice that a high school classmate of mine passed on. And 2 days later, there was another notice that the husband of one of my classmates passed on. A lot of my peers are exiting. So this end of life whole concept is of interest, and I'm doing things along that. CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. that's something that I started really investigating personally for myself and my husband. And we've made some decisions on that. And so subsequently, I've written about that, and I've created a checklist if one is considering entering a CCRC as an option. So it's things that are happening to me at this stage and age of life that are of interest. And you mentioned like money. Yeah, I'm not a wealthy woman, but I have enough. And so much of my work is pro bono. Some organizations do pay me because that's their policy. And that's kind of nice because that pays some of my expenses. I love to use various software to create beautiful slides and graphics to accompany my webinars. And so it helps pay for that, but it's definitely not something that I'm doing for the money primarily. It's for psychic, I call it psychic income. That's the joy that it gives me, and the people who express gratitude and say, thanks for sharing, Kathleen.
Yeah, I like that psychic income because, for me, this is, an encore career as well. Partially, at least the podcast and some of the things that I'm doing is, making that transition to being a little bit pickier about the engagements. And I think it's more fulfilling, even though if it doesn't always pay quite the same. So
yes, you're definitely experiencing that. And you're giving people like me an opportunity, a platform to come on and share what we're doing. So yes, I'm grateful to you for doing this.
Well, and you as well. So, let's talk about refired a little bit. What is the concept of refired?
And I was asked by a major financial institution to create, to write an article about this. So I'm kind of working on it. The old-fashioned concept of retirement is really dead. And it goes back into the 1800s when I think it was Otto Bismarck from Germany. He set it up. And that's when people were only living to, in their 60s. And they had a problem, and they were trying to get some people out of the workforce so they could get jobs for younger people. And so they created this pension that they would be paying people who retired, and people were encouraged to. So they got the pension, and they only lived a year or two after they started receiving it. So everything was solvent. Well, that idea caught on in the United States, and I think it was 1935 that Social Security Act was passed. And back in 1935, people didn't live as long as they live right now. So it was all solvent, and it worked. And it was just supposed to be a little bridge, a gap that got them from the point that they stopped working until they died. Okay, so it did that. Well, today, people are living in retirement for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, sometimes even more than that. And the whole concept of retirement as a leisure point, that history is fascinating. It goes back to the 50s. And these guys out in Arizona built, they bought this desert land and they built this senior city kind of a place. And to get people to buy that property, to come there, to move there, they created this myth of like the golden years of your retirement. And this is what you really deserve to do. And it was portrayed as a lifetime of leisure, of fine dining, of playing golf all day long. And this is just a wonderful life. And that's really where our concept of modern day retirement was. I think back to what you know about your grandparents or your great grandparents. I don't know your family, but in mine, and we grew up in a multi-generational family. There was great grandma, grandpa died already. Then there was grandpa and grandma. There was mom and dad, and then there was us. So I think that's 4. I've got 5 fingers up, but 2 of them are together. 4 generations were living in the same house. My great grandmother, she was still babysitting kids into her 90s. She was working the garden, producing vegetables. Grandma had a bakery that she was running. Mom and dad were doing their things, and then there were us kiddos. But my grandparents, my great grandparents didn't really have a kind of a retirement at all. They were just working. Grandma, she had a few years, but this whole none of them, the grandparents were not into this leisure mentality kind of thing, which is very, very much antiquated. And it's dangerous too. If you read the statistics, I think it's like the first 2 years after men retire, like if they've been in a big executive, they were Mr. Big or Dr. So-and-so, and after they retire, who are they? That 2-year period is very, very dangerous, because in a man's life, like those 2 years, it's the highest percentage of suicides, except there are some like in younger ages, but that 2-year period, when I used to be Mr. Big, but who am I now? They don't have a passion, a purpose. And part of it is because many guys who are in these big executive positions are focused on their job, and rightly so, and they don't have a great deal of friends that are outside of that work, or hobbies, or things that they do. So when they leave that, their life seems rather empty.
Yeah. So what do you view? How would you define refirement? That as a different way of looking at retirement. What does that mean to you?
To me, it means finding fulfillment, which is purpose and meaning in life. Something where I can make a difference, and I feel like I'm giving back, I'm assisting, I'm helping others. So it's having a fulfilling purpose and meaning in life.
I love that, and that's what I've heard as well. And seeing in studies and from other guests, is that's how you live, how you age well. I guess is there's a real difference. Is the people who don't have fulfillment and a purpose, as you said, either their suicide or their health deteriorates, or they have they're more likely to mentally decline. That I think that is a huge thing that we need to talk more about.
For me, I've got like 5, and I like to make up little pictures to go with them. In fact, I keep this up on my whiteboard because it helps to remind me, okay, are you doing these things? These are the 5 F words of my, pull it up a little bit there. 5 F words.
Fitness, family, friends. Sorry, I have part of the screen blocked. Fulfillment and fun. I love that.
Yeah,
family. And fun is a big thing.
Me, and I like, it's my F words that are good F words. There's family, fulfillment.
Clean F words we can use on the podcast.
Fulfillment, and that's really my purpose and meaning. And I had to have one that started with an F, so that was fulfillment. Fun, friends, and fitness. Fitness of body, mind, spirit, and money. So those are my 5. And I keep this up on my whiteboard because, as I said, I'll get carried away sometimes, and I'm just working on 1 or 2 of these, and I forget. And believe it or not, the hardest one for me sometimes is fun. I have to remember to have fun. So this weekend, I got tickets. Our American Stage Theater is doing their outdoor production, which they do every spring, and it's a musical. And this year it's Hair. I was not that going to be. I remember seeing Hair when it originally came out in I think it was like the early 70s, and it was at.
That sounds about right.
University of Wisconsin, Madison, when I was a student there, and it was in their theater, and I can remember being way up in the audience and looking and saying, "Oh my gosh, she hasn't got any clothes on." Now I think the version of Hair that they show in St. Petersburg, they will all have their clothes on. But we got tickets to go to that, and we're also going to do a little getaway later this week and get out of town and go visit an area and stay in a bed and breakfast and do a little history tour, and so that's fun.
Well, that sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. Well, let's talk, just for a minute about your book, Moving Forward on Your Own, a Financial Guidebook for Widows. You mentioned, why you wrote it. How does it help widows? Why should people read it? Tell us a little bit about it.
I'll give you a little bit of background about that book. That book was published in 2010. I mean, if that's okay, if I can give you
Oh, yes, please.
It can be. All right, I've been doing some speaking and I've been doing some writing, and my husband died in February of 2007. He was diagnosed with cancer in 2006 in December, incurable, inoperable. There was nothing that could be done. So he died, and he and I were really close, and he was a pastor, so he was a real spiritual person. And before he died, I said to him, I just want to go with you. I don't want you to leave me. And he explained to me that he needed to go. He said he had accomplished everything he was supposed to do in this lifetime, but you, Kathleen, have not. And the only way that you're going to accomplish these things is if I go. Great. Well, what am I supposed to accomplish? I don't know, but you'll figure it out after I'm gone. Okay, so he dies. And I kept talking to him in my head, even after he's gone. I still talk to him occasionally. So I was on the backyard on the swing overlooking this beautiful lake behind our property, where we used to have lots of conversations. And I'm talking to him in my head. And he said, I got it. I got the job. And you'd have to know Tom, because he was a very, very funny man. I said, okay, that's great. What job did you get? He said, I'm your chief guardian angel. I said, oh, wonderful.
Nice.
Wonderful, wonderful. He said, but wait, there's more. Okay. He said, as chief guardian angel, I've been put on a committee. And he knew I understood committees because I'd been on doctoral committees when I was a university professor. He said, I'm on this committee, and there's other people, some of them some of them are going to be coming into your life soon. But we have been charged that we have 1 year to work with you from the time my cancer was diagnosed, so that would have been back in December, until this coming December. He's talking to me now. It was like 2 months, February, it was like April or so. We got that time to work with you. And at the end of that time, you will know what your life purpose is. Great. Okay. That was it. And over the next few months, I started thinking, and some people started coming into my life. And I knew by the end of that year that I was supposed to be focused on working with widows and helping more widows clients. And I was supposed to write a book. Now, I didn't have a clue how I was going to write this book. But the next year, so that was 2008, I started working on a book. I collected some of the articles I'd written already. I wrote some things about grief and how I'd process the grief. And then I knew I wanted to have a beautiful book, just like Women Are Beautiful. And there wasn't anything out there already. There was one book that was available, but it was a real thick book. Well, not that thick, it was that thick. And I used to give it to my widowed clients, and many of them in the next meeting would give it right back to me and say, I can't process it. I can't process it. So I knew it needed to be something easier. It needed to be something beautiful like they were. So I wanted to have a lot of art and color in the book. I met an artist who said, yes, you can use my art in the book. So that was coming together. I had a group of colleagues who were like an advisory group. I would write some things and then pass it around with them. And what did you think of it? I had a group of widows who helped me to pick the title of it. So it's coming together. It's coming together. It's coming together. And I'm thinking, oh, how am I going to publish this thing? I guess I better talk to some publishers. So I arranged meetings with commercial publishers. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to touch it. They said, it's going to be too expensive to publish in color. We'll just do it in black and white and spot color here and there. I said, no, it's got to be beautiful. I want all this color in the book. It's not long enough. It's only 80 pages. I don't want to overwhelm the widows. I don't want to make it 250 pages long. We're not sure we really like the title of this book, Moving Forward on Your Own, a Financial Guidebook. Look, I've run it past my focus group, and that's the one that they picked. That's the one that's going to be it. So I said, I guess I'm not going to work with a commercial publisher. And then I discovered self-publishing or independent publishing. And I explored those possibilities and decided to go independent publishing. So what I wound up doing was I called her a book shepherd who helped coordinate everything. She was in Texas. My interior designer, I used to think interior designer was who you hired to fix your living room up. That's the inside of your book, lays out the book. She was in the San Francisco area. My editor was up in Detroit. The printer was in Canada. We never met in person, but we just virtually put this book together. And then I was only going to print 500 copies. I was going to give them to my clients and my friends and family, and that was it. Bingo. And I'm getting a quote for what it's going to cost. And the book shepherd has the figures. And I agree, okay, we'll print 500. And it's the day that the printing is supposed to happen. And I get a phone call from her. And she said, Kathleen, I want you to sit down. Okay. I made a mistake. The price that I gave you for the 500, that was going to be in black and white. And if we do it in color, it's going to be an exorbitant price. And I said, and she said, there's another way we can do offset printing instead of this other way. And if you print 2,000 copies, it will be less expensive per unit and you'll have more. And she said, this book is going to go. And I said, that's way too expensive. It was around $10,000. I said, I'm not going to do it. And she said, well, just think about it today and we'll talk tomorrow. I talked to my stepson and he said, Mom, do it. He said, just take some of the money that you'll inherit from Dad's IRA because it's part of his legacy as well as yours. Do it. So I spoke to my book shepherd the next day. I said, all right, we're going to go with it. And she said, I'm not kidding you. This book is going to go. So we printed 2,000. And the first month, 1,000 copies were bought by the United States Army.
Fantastic.
For their Survivor Outreach Service program. That's when the Gulf War was going on. And they were working with a lot of widowed groups. And so it was very shortly that we were doing a rerun. And then a major insurance company picked up me as their designated speaker on widowhood. And they started giving the book to advisors for then advisors to give those books to their clients. And they put through big orders. In the meantime, the book was selling. So now, like if you go to my website, it says over 80,000 copies are in circulation. It's actually more like 85,000. But I thought, oh, just leave it at 80,000. People won't even believe that. So I changed it to 85,000. But the book is now available only through Amazon, print on demand, because previously I would have to print up like 1,000 or 2,000. And then I'd have to pay for storage of the book, and then I'd have to get out and market the book, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So it's easier for me this way. The quality is good, and people can access it for if they want more than 25, they can contact me directly and pay less than what Amazon charges per book. But that's the way that I can keep the book available out there without me having to do a lot of the administrative details with it. So that's the story of how the book came into being.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, and I think the big message was that you were believing in yourself and your message. And I think that's important because people, talking to widows from a lot of the guests, I mean, you and I know some of the same people who talk on widowhood, and the traditional financial services industry needs to find a different way. And a lot of people are discovering that. But coming from the life insurance industry, I know it's a crazy problem because life insurance agents are usually the ones who are almost always the ones talking to widows. And yet they're often the least equipped. I never learned anything about how to talk to a widow. That was never part of the training. It's like yeah, you're going to deliver the great news. You have a check, but it's like, okay, well, beyond that, what do you say beyond,
And
okay,
probably
here's
most
a
of those
check,
those
you
those
know?
say, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And
Yeah.
that kind of statement doesn't really cut it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it. So, I mean, I think your guidebook is such an important value. So, let's get into what I call the Get Ready Money questions. These are the questions I ask all my guests. These are more rapid fire questions. The first one is, what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
Money is really a tool that we should use to support our values, what's important to us. So I see money as a tool.
I love that is, I'm hearing that more from, a lot of my guests and people, in my network, that you can and should think about aligning money with your values, and that we're all able to do so. And that's a really important thing. And I think that's a transition I'm sure that you've seen as well over the last, few years in financial services, is that whole conversation. So the next question, Kathleen, is what's one simple thing people can do each year to set themselves up for financial success?
You keyed it in like each year, at least annually, have a review. Where am I at? What's the cash flow, the budget? Am I in line with that? Are my investments on track? Am I saving what I anticipated that I savings for? Do I have, how is my safety net? Is that in place? Is the insurance at a level that it should be at? What about my estate plans? Do they need to be updated? Has it been 5 years or more since I've taken a look at it? Do I even know where the will is located? Is that in place? Is it time to start thinking about more than just, and so much is done in estate planning. It's the numbers, it's the documents. But you're familiar with some of my work. Legacy is about telling and sharing our stories with others.
Yeah, and and I was talking to somebody about that who's going to be creating legacy videos with advisors. Um, to go beyond, just the documents, but to explain the why of why they're making certain decisions and what else, that context now around that, because the documents are very dry and very, just I guess the tip of the iceberg with the whole thing that goes into legacy planning. So I think that's a valuable way to look at our legacy that we leave. Is the communication is important.
Yeah. So that once a year review, and my husband and I, because I'm a financial planner in our family, so I'm my only client. I don't do work with clients as a business anymore since I've refired. But it's that week between Christmas and New Year's that we really look at our whole financial picture. And then we also do an update, a little mini update a couple of times during the year. But the big one is between Christmas and New Year's.
Fantastic, fantastic. So the next question is, what money myth are you trying to break?
That financial planning is only for wealthy people.
I love it.
Yeah, I wish that financial planning, financial literacy was taught in high school. It's not. The kid's taking this advanced calculus class. When's he going to use out advanced calculus? But very few schools offer any kind of financial literacy course.
Yeah, I've been part of the financial literacy movement for quite a long time. And fortunately, we are seeing some movement. There are some people who are doing great work trying to get financial literacy programs into schools. There are some states that are starting to talk about it. But, I'm thinking back to my college years. I took a course in geology. That makes no sense at all. When basic personal finance, I got in trouble with a credit card, because of course they push credit cards on college students without giving you a lot of context, on how to use them. And, I ran up a pretty good credit card bill, by the time I graduated, because I'm like, hey, it's free money. And then all of a sudden, I can just make the minimum payment. And then and then seeing that balance, you're like, okay, this is not a good thing. And so it's like so many young people are struggling with that, because we should learn that basic skill. Money is something that we're dealing with in every facet of our lives.
And I love it that like two of the major national, international organizations that work with widows, Camp Widow, which is a part of Soaring Spirits International, and Modern Widows Club, infusing financial literacy into some of their programs, their materials, their online resources.
Yeah, so things are changing slowly, like always. But I think we're in a better spot than we've been historically when it comes to these issues. So the next question is, we'll get out the time machine for a minute. What advice would you give your younger self about money if you could go back in time knowing what you know now?
Understanding how money, or I was in my late 30s when I really got it, that money was more than just to be spent. You got the money in. Of course, I've always been frugal. And so there were times that money was tight, and especially when the baby came along. And but I really didn't think in terms of as like either I looked at money, I could get money by working, or if somebody gave me money, like I had an aunt who every year on our birthdays, we'd get $5 from her. And it increased over the years, but I could be given money. But I didn't really see money as making money for me, earning money, and understanding how, the compounding, if you start saving, and the magic of compounding, it grows and grows and grows. So just that idea that money could make money for me was like, oh my gosh, because someday I'm not going to be able to get money from my job. So I've got to get a stockpile of money put away.
Yeah, a few of my guests have talked about compound interest. And it's such an important topic for people who've been watching and listening to the podcast episode. I've actually got an episode that's all we talk about is compound interest, because it's such an important concept for people to know. So Kathleen, what is your number one go-to money resource for yourself? Whether it's a newsletter, an app, a website, what do you turn to as that number one resource for your information on money?
I like reading, it's a blog by Jonathan Clements. It's called Humble Dollar. In fact,
yes.
I've written some articles for Humble Dollar. Unfortunately, Jonathan is dying now. He has incurable cancer, which he announced last year. And he's in the process of handing over his editorial role. Jonathan Clements, for those people who are listening, you may remember him. He was the money guy on Wall Street Journal years and years ago. I read everything about, that he did. And then he did some things independently. And then in the last several years, he's been doing this blog, Humble Dollar. And good insight on a variety of topics related to money.
Yeah, I subscribe to the Humble Dollar. It's always insightful. And as you mentioned, there's guest writers like yourself providing perspectives. But, for people who are not familiar with Jonathan Clements, I would highly recommend the essays he's written. I don't know, essays, articles, whatever, about his journey with cancer, because not only are they moving, there's some good lessons in there about dealing with end of life and how to look at it in perspective. Just phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, he was, I think Next Avenue did an interview with him just recently, and AARP has published some of his essays on end of life, and some of the things that back when he was younger, which were so important, not so much now.
Yeah, it is interesting.
So that's my personal day-to-day, a publication that I keep up with the profession, because I am a certified financial planner, and I keep that certification current because I figure it makes more sense to have that being on podcasts like you, that people will take me more seriously knowing I have that credential. So to keep up with the profession, I like Michael Kitz's Nerd's Eye View.
Oh yes,
because that covers the full, and it comes out every Friday, and it summarizes what's happening on many different financial fronts, and then directs you to the immediate. You can go back and read the source article. That's outstanding.
Yeah, he does amazing work. And for everybody watching and listening, as always, there will be links to both the Humble Dollar and to Michael Kitz's Nerd's Eye View. So, Kathleen, to wrap up, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
I guess I would go back to what I referenced earlier, that the need to align our values and what matters most to us in life with money, and use money to support those rather than the other way around. And it's not about, where I'm at right now is I have enough and I'm comfortable with that. It's not about amassing more and more and more. I'm involved with a lot of philanthropic ventures. In fact, the American College of Financial Services asked me to redesign one of the courses in their Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy program. So which I did, and that course is being taught right now. So philanthropy is one of my important values, and I use my money to fit accordingly.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic advice. And for any advisors who are listening, I would recommend checking out the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy designation. I was a guest lecturer in one of the courses myself, and it's a fantastic program. And philanthropy is a major consideration, and if you're not talking to your clients about it as part of their legacy planning, you're really missing out.
That is so true. And there was a study that came out the end of January, I believe it. Cerelli, that's the research tank and think tank, came out, and they're projecting this huge, which we all know, this intergenerational trillions that's going to go from one to the next. And they've said that it's about 54, I think if my numbers are correct, 54 trillion is expected to pass to surviving spouses. And 95% of those surviving spouses are going to be widows, because we live longer than the guys do. And so then there was another report that took off after that and talked about this money eventually then will go on to kids, but the women will have it. And the things that they're interested in, it's not so much investments. That's what the guys, top of the list for guys. But women are more interested in relationships and philanthropy, charitable giving. And so the recommendation, I think it was from a Bank of America report, said that firms working with these widows will do well to expand the offerings that they provide for these widows. And charitable giving was one of the major areas. Of course, that's why in the CAP program, there are a number of people who are with that program that are in nonprofits, but there are attorneys, and financial planners who are recognizing that, yes, these women want to have this information. I'm very excited. I'm working with a widow pro bono right now, but she's going to be doing a legacy IRA rollover to a charitable gift annuity. And it's such a win-win-win all around, saving taxes, and because you can count it as your required minimum distribution from your IRA, not have to pay taxes on it. And then you get this, she's going to get 6.8% annually for the rest of her life. And she said, I can't find a CD that's paying me 6.8%, Kathleen. And then it's going to be eventually given to an organization that's near and dear to her heart. So it's like I said, it's a win-win.
Yeah, I've been involved with charitable giving, and there are some amazing ways to structure your gifts that benefit you, but most of all, benefit the nonprofits that you care about. And advisors can play a role. I know I've advised, on a pro bono basis, a number of plan giving officers, and you can help out. So if you're an advisor and you have an institution that's near and dear to your heart, check with their plan giving officer, because you may be a valuable resource for them.
Yeah. We did February 14th, we did a Galentine's Day event for widows, friends, and relatives of these women. And it was a lovely little brunch, and there was an art tour, and it was and then I spoke, and it was about issues related to widowhood and some suggestions on how they could give to the organization. And it was just a lovely, lovely event. It was for the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation, a nonprofit. And advisors there are nonprofits that would welcome them to partner with them to do some financial education.
Yeah, or even serve as a board member.
Yeah.
So Kathleen, where can people learn more about you? Are you available online, social media?
Can they come find my sandbox? It's my name, Kathleen Rehl, KATHLEEN REHL.com. And that'll connect you up with some information about the book. And we've got several I meant to mention there are several freebies that you can download free. There's Legacy Life Print Letters and Stories. It's a cookbook, sort of a way to help your clients write legacy stories. Financial Steps for Recent Widows. That is actually a chapter in the book. That is information for brand new widows. And then Impactful Empathy. Had a lot of positive feedback from this. This is communication, what to say, not to say, what to write in letters, a timeline. Like if you're communicating with a widowed client or a widowed friend, how to say it and when to say it to your grieving widowed clients. Better suggestions than "I'm so sorry for your loss."
Fantastic. And for people watching and listening, as always, there will be links to Kathleen's website and those resources in the show notes, so you can easily find them and check them out. So Kathleen, thanks again for joining us on the Get Ready Money podcast.
It's been fun, Tony.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. And as always, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.